seem to be carrying a pretty heavy burden.
No, after being here, who wouldn't?
I'm standing here in the shadow of maximum security detainee camp number 5, inside the U.S. Naval Station in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, also known as Gitmo. This motto is stamped all over the detainee camps: honor bound to defend freedom.
You've been invited here to see it with your own eyes.
I'm here to find out if this lofty motto, as some allege, has been upheld or otherwise ignored in the ongoing U.S.-led global war on terror.
We do the right thing here, despite, again, the misperceptions and myths perpetuated.
Why the myths and why the misperceptions?
I don't know.
This detention facility, the most controversial jail in the world, has become one of the most powerful symbols of the war.
There certainly has been conduct relating to the detainees there that violate fundamental principles of American law.
How upsetting is that?
It's a scar on an American history.
Torture. Like I said, I've been here going on 7 months. I have not seen torture. The only people that's getting tortured is us guards.
It took a year and a half to arrange access here. For that time, my motto was Gitmo or bust. So come along and see Gitmo for yourself.
This is part of our gear. If something's going on in the camp and they've got to dress out and protect themselves a little bit more.
President Obama says he'll close this detention facility, but that calls for an entirely new legal framework.
I think they forgot what our founding fathers had fought for and what we stood for.
Gitmo may not go bust anytime soon. Getting to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba is tough. Number one, it's in Cuba. Number two, it's exclusively a U.S. naval base, and so one can only get there through military approval, and that takes time. Okay, so it's July 12, 2007. I've started my email correspondence with Southcom to get the ball rolling and get access to Gitmo. I got this email back from them, and attached, as you can see, are the media ground rules, the travel documents, and the personal info questionnaire. Keeping my fingers crossed. We'll see. This is a journey Carol Rosenberg, a writer at the Miami Herald, has taken hundreds of times. She's an expert on Guantanamo. I spoke to her about what to expect.
You get taken in this military bubble, you are supervised and controlled, and your travel is handled, and it is a highly choreographed, extremely tightly controlled media environment. Okay, it's May 8th, 2008. I've just checked in with Southcom to see whether or not I can make it to Gitmo anytime soon, and they say actually that media tours are now closed till the fall, so we'll try again then. Things happen down there like no other court I've ever seen. After 18 months of scheduling and rescheduling and travel arrangements, I'm finally bound for Guantanamo Bay. I leave tomorrow, Sunday, November 30th. I'll be there for 4 days. Can't wait, I guess. It wasn't just the prop play making me nervous. I wasn't sure I'd get a real look at Guantanamo given all this hype. We'll see. This is Cuba, right?
This is it. Okay, please watch your hand gestures. Again, don't point. Yes, this is Cuba.
Welcome to Guantanamo Bay, 1898. This is some of the first film ever shot with Thomas Edison behind the camera. Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders are aiding the Cubans in the Spanish-American War, who sought independence from Spain.
We refer to it as no man's land. No man's land is an active Cuban minefield.
The U.S. offered its support in exchange for a 99-year lease to the base, later renegotiated in 1934. Annual rent, $2,000 a year, to be paid in gold. Pretty remarkable international border here.
It is. There's a lot of history out here with the gate itself. Everything that you see on the outside on Communist Cuba territory was constructed in the 60s, a little too late for its original purpose.
In 1959, Castro came to power. 5 years later, the Cuban Missile Crisis forced a partial evacuation of the base.
But that was the closest we ever got to a nuclear war during the Cold War.
In the early 90s, it housed Haitian refugees. And today, the U.S. pays an annual $3,000 rent to Cuba, but Castro refuses to cash the checks.
Once a month, we'll have a meeting with the Cubans. We'll come out here, we'll meet with their counterparts. This meeting is strictly a military-to-military meeting. There are no politics behind it.
As I was set to visit the detainee camps, things sure got political.
So, prior to departure, I received this media ground rules packet that lays out all the rules. First off, no manipulation of images. Second, can't shoot footage of detainees in any way that will identify them, their face, their names, any distinguishing marks, etc. And lastly, most importantly, a security review of all media and all footage will happen at the end of every day, conducted by an operational security representative, where they'll be able to delete any footage that goes against the ground rules.
If they're suicidal, we'll put them in a smock like this.
Inside the campfire, we house those detainees who have intelligence value.
This is going to be a classroom where we'll be teaching our classes.
Of course we treat our detainees safely and humanely. We're Americans. That's what we do.
Guantanamo Bay was nothing like what I expected. It took me a year and a half to get here, and soon I'd get to see the camps where the government claims some of the world's most dangerous terrorists are held. Sunday, November 30th. I'm on an aging prop plane flying over the Caribbean on the way to Gitmo. Thought I'd never make it. At sunset, I catch my first glimpse of Cuba. From the airstrip, we take a ferry across the bay, and I'm quickly shuttled to my quarters. The next morning, I was picked up by my 2 media escorts and got my first glimpse of the naval base. First thing I'm thinking is, what the heck? There's cul-de-sacs and Caribbean-style villas. There's tons of native iguanas. Literally, they're everywhere. But I'm confused. All I heard about Gitmo was torture, prisons, and terrorists. We'd go over the hills and to the sea and start the tour of Camp Number 4, housing compliant detainees. For security purposes, some personnel elected to conceal their names and faces.
Here, the detainees have their own plant areas, and they do have a variety of different plants. For a compliant detainee over here, these are all the different items they get. They get a regular toilet paper over here. They get upgrade and prayer beads. They'll also get white clothing, and they'll get the tan clothing.
Here I see the system of compliance and non-compliance. So for non-compliant detainees, the orange jumpsuit. For compliant ones, they get a nicer prayer rug with an image of Mecca. And the white jumpsuit, manufactured by, quote, Bob Barker.
I'm Rear Admiral Dave Thomas. I'm the commander of Joint Task Force Guantanamo.
The Admiral is the officer appointed by Washington to oversee all operations.
We treat the detainees safely and humanely. As you walk about the camps, that's apparent. There's nothing that we do here that I wouldn't be proud to show my mom or my kids. And that I truly believe that all Americans would agree is safe and humane.
This one is used for movie time. They come in here, and we got TVs. We have videos. They get to pick what movie they want.
Soccer's one of the most popular.
Soccer, yes, the wildlife.
What movie are they watching here? This is Madagascar, I think. Yeah, looks like it.
For outdoor recreation, there's daily access to soccer, basketball, and the day I was in Camp 4, ping pong and foosball.
Brand new. Right out of the box, I guess.
Given such amenities, the guards and their commander here explained there's no basis for claims of inhumane treatment. Plus, new units are posted here every 6 to 12 months.
I get a little disheartened when people talk about inhumane treatment and things of that nature down here, because that's simply not true.
If they could come out of those cells, they would attack us in a heartbeat.
These are 3 detainee guards. They say their job is downright dangerous.
We had pretty much the hardcore of the hardcore, and I've seen people get feces thrown on them every day. I've seen 5 people get hit with feces in less than 20 minutes. And I'm talking in their mouth, in their eyes, in their ears. They have no hesitation.
No, what you're seeing isn't some technical hiccup. It's military censorship. Upon careful review of my tapes, it was determined that there were 17 clips of objectionable footage. This is one of them. I had to record over each clip, so what you're seeing is the arm of a public affairs officer sitting across from the camera. Now, back to the story. This reward system has its pros and cons for detainees. While the camp offers language, history, and soon art and geology classes, they're locked in by soft handcuffs. And then there's the issue of suicides and hunger strikes.
Now, if they're suicidal or they try to commit self-harm to themselves, we'll put them in a smock like this. All it does, opens up.
The Defense Department won't release official numbers on suicide attempts, but confirms 4 detainees committed suicide in 2006 and 2007. But there may be many more we don't know of.
We have a full-service operating room here. We can do anything in this operating room that you could do in any operating room with the exception of open heart surgery, brain surgery, things like that.
The hospital psychologist regularly evaluates detainees' mental conditions.
And we admit people to the inpatient unit for the same reasons we would in the States, and that's if they're gravely disabled, they're actively psychotic, or a danger to themselves or to others.
They also administer a feeding tube to detainees who go on hunger strikes, an act critics claim is a harsh technique, but officials here say is routine.
The tube is first inserted in through the nose with some lubrication. They're offered lubrication as well as an anesthetic in the lubrication.
When I first came here, I did it for just to see what it was like. I'd heard it was...
You did it yourself?
Yeah, I did. I just had to know. I kept hearing it was torture, and it was painful, and it was abuse, and it's none of the above.
Next, it was on a maximum security camps 5 and 6, where non-compliant detainees are held, and thus there would be far less access.
Inside of Camp 5, we house those detainees who have intelligence value and also who are been non-compliant during their stay here.
This is Camp 6. This is the most modern facility down here at JTF Guantanamo.
What's some of the basis for non-compliance?
Just failure to follow guards' instructions, being of assaultive nature, throwing feces and things of that nature, the things that they do, sir.
Take you through the camp.
All right, sir, you're currently standing in the stern-side cell inside of Camp 5. It's approximately 12 by 8.
There's somebody on the top, somebody on the bottom, roving at all times. A guard's typical day, he's going to do 50 to 100 shackling evolutions, and he's going to walk 8 to 12 miles a day.
This is an interview room / movie room also.
The coffee machine?
Coffee machine is used during the interview process if the team comes in and they want to use it for the detainee while he's in here, sir.
And this is going to be a classroom where we'll be teaching art classes.
Why art?
First class we were told we were teaching. It wasn't a decision made inside the camp, I can tell you that.
This is a standard-size sink and toilet with inside of the camp.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, high stress though, right?
As long as you know that everybody, I mean, if you trust everybody around you, then you don't worry so much about the stress.
This is the rec area. Each detainee, if he's in a compliant status, will receive 4 hours of rec daily. If you're in non-compliant status, you receive 2 hours of rec daily. As you look inside of the rec pens, you see some type of heart exercise equipment, whether it's elliptical type exercise or, to my left, it'll be treadmill. When they come out, they have their Quran. They're allowed to bring to rec. They will place it in the rec bin, inside that plastic bin where they store it while they're on rec.
At this point, a number of detainees began banging on the windows, some yelling in Arabic, others shouting, quote, "You, Charlie." Once again, I was instructed to record over the footage.
Only thing about the building, sir, they may be standing in the window now.
I can't visibly see any.
I'll go and screen all this once we get back. I'll take a second
Okay.
look at it. I don't think there's any issues. There's no cameras or anything, so I don't think.
I see one is sitting right here looking under.
Where we got one? Yeah, right here. Don't get that.
And there's one right in front of me.
Switch the cameras.
Josh. And so that banging that they're doing on the windows and the yelling, is that usual or only when the camera's around?
So they just realize that you're inside of the camp and they know that you are with a camera, so they've realized you're from the press and the media, so they're actually making noise to draw your attention, sir.
It's working. Yeah. It's happening plenty other places right now.
Okay. So that concludes the tour unless you have any further questions.
How's life working here? Is that it?
Life is great, sir.
Yeah, perfect. I'll follow you.
All right, we're about to enter Camp X-Ray.
I don't think we worry about any perceived ghost from the past.
It's impossible to move, it's impossible to see, hear, smell, talk even.
Where are we? All right, we're about to enter Camp X-Ray. What we have here are the original detainee cells.
In 2001, following the 9/11 attacks, the Bush administration opened the Joint Task Force Detention Facility. The first, quote, enemy combatants were brought here to the now closed Camp X-Ray. By all accounts, today's detention conditions have cleaned up since 03 and 04.
I don't think we worry about any perceived ghost from the past.
But Gitmo has ghosts.
Clearly, the techniques used for interrogation that I saw by the CIA, by the military intelligence and FBI, went into the realms of torture, cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that.
Mozambique is a British national held in Guantanamo for 3 years after being captured in Pakistan, where he says he was staying with family after fleeing the war in Afghanistan, where before 9/11, he had moved to start a non-profit girls' school with his wife and kids.
I have never been involved with Al-Qaeda. I've never been involved with its organization. Do not agree with the killing and the targeting of innocent civilians in any shape or form.
Begg was released to the UK in 2005 and all charges were dropped.
Yes, I underwent sensory deprivation, which included having my eyes blocked out with blackened out goggles, my ears with earmuffs, and my mouth with a face mask, being shackled, with my hands tied behind my back to my legs that were, or my ankles that were also shackled. So that was one of the stress positions where you can, it's impossible to move, it's impossible to see, hear, smell, talk even.
Former Navy JAG Lord Charles Swift represented a Yemeni ex-detainee, Salim Hamdan, accused of being one of bin Laden's low-level drivers.
What the administration argued was a full and fair trial was that I could use evidence that I had obtained by waterboarding, a methodology used by the Spanish Inquisition, among others, and I could present that evidence in secret without the accused being present, and that evidence alone, that confession or the confession of someone else, would be sufficient to sentence you to death.
It's been revealed through House and Senate hearings that a slew of officials from the Pentagon, Justice Department, the Navy, and the White House approved of harsh, coercive, and sometimes inhumane interrogation techniques in 2002 that many at the time considered warranted given 9/11. Various officials at the State Department, the Navy, FBI, and the Pentagon raised red flags. However, Secretary Rumsfeld eventually approved and was later forced to revise the use of 17 interrogation techniques such as stress positioning, exploiting phobias, forced nudity, hooding, isolation, sense deprivation, sleep deprivation, exposure to hot and cold, bouts of loud music, and waterboarding. In 2005, Senator John McCain led the passing of the Detainee Treatment Act, barring coercive techniques. Today is a new day in Washington. A new Congress, a new Justice Department, and a new president in the White House who plans to close the most controversial jail in the world. But what happens to the detainees? 779 came through Guantanamo, over 500 have been released, and roughly 250 still remain, 60 of whom, like these 17 Chinese Muslims, have been granted release, but their home countries either won't take them back or they may face torture and persecution there.
No one thinks they should be there. No one wants them there, but they are there because of politics. And that, in and of itself, defines Guantanamo Bay as a political prison.
Congress legislated that the U.S. won't take detainees, so other countries must agree to repatriate them. Portugal recently volunteered, but Australia, for example, rejected U.S. requests. And what about the remaining suspected terrorists held at Gitmo? Dozens and dozens of whom the government says are a real threat. Are they to be transferred to U.S. soil? Charles Swift says we should try these detainees fairly in U.S. courts, not by military commissions where coerced confessions are admissible.
Well, you can't admit evidence that was obtained by waterboarding or frequent flying and that sort of thing at that type of a court. Well, guess what? We shouldn't admit that evidence. And if that's what we're going to base our trials on and our detentions on, admissions we obtain through torture, then we don't need a new legal system, we need a new moral compass.
That compass is pointing President Barack Obama toward closing the Guantanamo detention camps. But it's not so easy. Tony Barco is a former federal prosecutor who specialized in terrorism cases under the Bush administration and has monitored Guantanamo hearings on the base.
The Obama administration says that they want a plan to close the detention facility there. How difficult of a legal process will it be to make that happen?
There's just going to be a lot of litigation, and cases like this take years potentially, and so it could be years before, after transfer to federal court, before these cases actually are tried in a federal court system.
While the detainee camps may close, the base and this souvenir shop will remain open. There is no doubt the legacy of Guantanamo will live on.